It is the 8th model introduced in the Digimon collaboration series and the 5th one introduced in the 2024 run, featuring everyone's iconic bad boy biker himself of Beelzemon, DGM07, Beelzebu Satn, with a kit of Shoot Spike, Curse Shot, Shotgun, Float Legs, and the leg ability of Bloodstain, which buffs power when attacking and breaking parts on the opponents. Now, with the collaboration that we've seen up to this point featuring 1 to 2 very iconic models from each of the respective Digimon series, whether that be Adventure, Adventure 02, and now even Tamers, it honestly goes to show that they picked some really good choices to represent all of the respective series in one form or another. The bad boy biker Beelzemon is most certainly an iconic and well-loved favorite across the Digimon and the Metarock community as a whole for these very reasons. Shoot Spike on the head part, in his only new skill being introduced in the game currently with his release, is a support-based skill that, when activated, serves a number of different roles across several different kind of support skills. The first of which it serves as is Shoot Boost, which is a 50% boost to the shooting damage of himself and all allies, but this one very likely will apply only to the Beelzemon expy himself specifically. Additionally, it'll also provide a 50% damage bonus when piercing on your next attack, and it will also negate stealth and conceal effects. So this is basically a mix between Shoot Boost, Shooter Core, and Radar Sight for the most part. So this is going to be a very solid skill that you can use on any of your long-range combat types, especially your more ready-to-fight ones that don't require a lot of setup in order to use, given that this one doesn't really require anything aside from just a one turn to set it up, and then basically fire it off on your next turn after that. Curse Shot on the right arm is a shooting skill that, upon attacking the target, whether you break apart or not, prevents it from being healed, or if you do break it, even restored for a set number of turns. This basically guarantees that if you go to shoot something and it breaks, it's not going to be coming back for a while, and the enemy can't very easily restore it or fix it to keep the advantage back in their favor. The only real drawback to Curse Shot is that it's something that you can't use repeatedly, so it does require a one-turn cooldown between uses in order to be used again. But with a base power of 2240, it is going to be a pretty nasty shot whether you choose to use it one form or another. And with a success of 1100, it means he's going to have a really tough time trying to actually have enemies dodge or graze him, and he's going to be hitting pretty consistently across the board. The only real drawback is that the enemy does apply Stat Cleanse or something similar to self before Curse Shot applies, it is able to tank it properly before the Curse Affliction actually does come into play. Shotgun on the left arm is another very popular skill started making runs and definitely putting scatter type of attacks back on the map. But to explain Shotgun, it is a scatter type of attack which will damage one part normally and then two others randomly for extra damage. Shotgun has a little bit more of an extra kick to it that is based on conditional positioning. Basically, if you attack opponent from the backside in their cool phase, it essentially serves as nothing more than just a basic Gatling attack. Nothing more, nothing less. But if you are attacking a forward-facing foe in their heat phase, if you outrun them to the line or time it just right as they've just finished their cooldown phase, you deal times 1.5 damage and a free critical hit on top of that, making this an immensely powerful blow if you're able to time it correctly, and just mostly good for scatter damage if you're not really focusing too heavily on position. But given that this one does basically get a free crit out of it, it's going to be pretty important that you time that pretty effectively. Float Legs means that this model is going to have relatively solid coverage across all terrains at A rank across the board, at the cost of not necessarily being as bulky or speedy. But given that this is a collab model, that previous clause just kind of gets thrown out the window. A rank across the board means he's going to be getting 10% leg bonus on any terrain ever, excluding Cyber at S rank, which is 20%, and his leg stats actually aren't too shabby either. With a base mobility of 925, he's off to a very solid start in the speed department, so nothing really you can say no to there before any other bonuses come into play. An evade of 1076 isn't too shabby either, as it means he can dodge or graze pretty fairly well. Not very consistently, but with the stuff that has much lower success, he will have a pretty solid time dodging or grazing it well. A melee resist of 1225 and a shoot resist of 1410, as well as are both very solid though, as this does mean he can hold his own both up close for enemies that try to get in his space, and at range when he's exchanging shots from afar with the enemy sniper. And with a heavy support of 2, it does give it a very solid leg you can use in basically any situation as a whole. As far as armor is concerned, he's also very solid in that department too, with a head armor of about 3900, arms just shy of 3800, and legs just over 3800 HP. This is a very healthy boy, and it means that compared and in addition to those very solid damage reduction stats, this is going to be a pretty solid model that's going to be pretty difficult to take down across the board, because he's got the health and the reduction, and he's fast enough to be able to hold his own moderately well before any other modifiers come to play. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I honestly have to rate it a pretty solid 7 out of 10 across the board. It's a pretty well-rounded model, primarily for its very interesting synergy. Shoot Spike is something that, of course, synergizes with any kind of shooting-based skill, no matter what it is, but given that Curse Shot and Shotgun are, obviously, shooting skills, they do synergize there very well. And the leg ability of Bloodstain is a nice addition too, as it does mean that every time he goes to break something successfully, he gets an extra damage bonus that stacks on top of that permanently as long as his legs aren't broken. So the more stacks and the more parts he breaks, the more dangerous he becomes the longer he's allowed to stay on the field. And ultimately, it is a very solid synergy all around. Whether you start with Curse Shot and alternate between that and Shotgun, or start with Curse Shot and alternate with Shoot Spike, or any kind of order of operation, it's a model that you can use pretty solidly. Curse Shot for being able to break things pretty easily, and Shotgun for your free crits if you do time it correctly with enemies in their heat phase. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him just a little bit higher at a 7.5 out of 10. Given that even though Curse Shot and Shotgun are pretty conditional in the fact that one cast needs a one-turn cooldown and the other is positionally reliant, you can of course pair Shoot Spike with basically any kind of shooting skill in this same vein. So say, for instance, Power Rifle, or Long Shot, or Hyper Beam, or anything else of the like. If it is a shooting type skill, you can most certainly capitalize on that bonus. And Bloodstain on float legs does make it a very aggressive type of leg that you can use on your melee fighters or your shooting fighters all the same, and not really see any drop in performance overall.